After Alexander the Great's invasion of Persia and the destruction of Persepolis, the nearby city of Istakhr rose in prominence. Revered for its Temple of Anahita, Istakhr held a sacred place among Zoroastrians and soon became the center of a new ruling dynasty known as the Frataraka. The title Frataraka had earlier been used in the Achaemenid period to refer to local governors who paid tribute to the empire. Thus, it appears that this new dynasty was initially subject to the Seleucids. The term Frataraka is also closely tied to the Zoroastrian faith. Its literal meaning has been translated as guardian of fire or kindler of fire. This suggests that the rulers of Pars maintained a strong connection to Zoroastrianism, a belief further supported by their coins, which depict their kings standing before a sacred fire. For about 50 years, the Frataraka kings ruled as vassals of the Seleucids. Later, they rebelled against their overlords and declared independence. Between 140 and 130 BC, the Frataraka realm was absorbed into the Parthian Empire, though its rulers retained the privilege of using the royal title Malka, king, and continued to mint coins in their own name. A study of the coins minted in this period not only reveals the close relationship between the king and the fire temple, but also shows the preservation of traditions and the enduring memory of the Achaemenid monarchy. The Frataraka rulers not only adopted the names of the great Achaemenid kings for themselves, but at times even fashioned their own likenesses to resemble those ancient sovereigns. Through their narrative traditions, the Fratarakas carried the memory of the Achaemenid royal heritage forward, ultimately passing it on to their heirs, the Sasanian dynasty. The province of Pars, on the eve of the Sasanian rise, was ruled by a great king who governed the entire region, alongside several lesser kings who held authority over smaller territories. According to Al-Tabari, the king of Pars at that time was Ardashir of the Bazrangi dynasty, who resided in Istakhr. Sasan, the great ancestor of the Sasanian monarchs, served as the Mobad, high priest of the Temple of Anahita during Ardashir's reign. Sasan married Dinag, a woman of the Bazrangi lineage, thus linking the Sasanian family to the royal house of Pars. From this union was born Babak, who succeeded his father as high priest of the Anahita fire temple after Sasan's death. Babak later married a woman named Rudak, and their son was Ardashir. When Ardashir reached the age of learning, Babak, using his influence, persuaded King Ardashir to send the boy to Tira, the Agbed castle commander of the city of Darabgerd. Tyre took charge of Ardashir's education and training, and it was agreed that upon his death, his position would pass to Ardashir. Ardashir, an ambitious young man, used his position as Agbed to expand his influence and power throughout Pars. According to Al-Tabari, Ardashir once dreamed that an angel appeared to him and said, "God has granted you dominion over the lands." This vision gave Ardashir the courage to pursue his ambitions. Taking advantage of the Parthian king's preoccupation with war against the Romans, Ardashir took his first step, leading a campaign against Gopana near Darabgerd. After seizing the city, he marched his soldiers toward Konus, where he slew Manucher, the ruler of that district. Lurwir was the next destination of Ardashir's advancing army. Following these victories, Ardashir sent a letter to his father, reporting his triumphs and urging him to overthrow Ardashir. Babak complied, slew Gochir and assumed the kingship of Pars himself. Thus, in 205 AD, the House of Sasan brought Pars under its control. By then, Babak was an aged man. Seeking to legitimize his newly founded rule and secure the royal authority within his lineage, he wrote to the Parthian monarch Vologases V, requesting that his son Shapur be formally recognized as the king of Pars. Vologases, enraged by the overthrow of his Parthian vassal dynasty in Pars, harshly rejected Babak's appeal and branded him a rebel. Yet, still weakened by his recent wars with Rome, he was unable to muster his army to subdue the Persians. Babak, lying on his deathbed, paid no heed to the Parthian monarch's rejection and appointed his son Shapur as his successor. Shapur sent a letter to Ardashir, summoning him to come and pledge obedience. But Ardashir, harboring grand ambitions, refused his brother's command. Angered, Shapur gathered an army to punish his defiant brother and marched toward Darabgerd. Yet fortune favored Ardashir, for on the way, while Shapur rested among the ruins of an old building, a fragment of brick fell upon his head and killed him instantly. Thus Ardashir was spared a disastrous battle. The mysterious nature of Shapur's death has led some modern historians to suspect Ardashir's involvement. However, in the absence of clear evidence, no definite conclusion can be drawn. Upon hearing of his brother's death, Ardashir entered Istakhr with his army and formally proclaimed himself King of Pars. To bring order to his realm, he distributed court offices and official ranks among his loyal followers. While reorganizing the administrative system, Ardashir discovered a conspiracy plotted by his own brothers. The new king swiftly ordered the execution of all the traitors. Around the same time, the people of Darabgerd rose in rebellion against him. Ardashir immediately marched with his forces toward the city and crushed the revolt with severity. With Pars pacified and the state administration stabilized, Ardashir turned his attention to territorial expansion. He led his army from Istakhr toward Kerman. The king of Kerman, Vologases, assembled his troops to confront Ardashir. In the ensuing battle, Ardashir captured the Kermanian king and seized his capital. He entrusted the province to his son, also named Ardashir, and returned to Pars. Soon after, he advanced southward, extending his dominion to the shores of the Persian Gulf. Ardashir's control over the southern trade ports along the Persian Gulf was of great importance, for at that time the overland trade routes had declined due to the weakness of the Han dynasty and the raids of nomadic tribes across Central Asia. As a result, maritime routes had become the principal channels of commerce between East and West. Through the conquest of the southern ports, Ardashir gained access to a vital source of revenue. After his victories in the south, Ardashir ordered the construction of a new city named Ardashir Quara. In gratitude to the goddess Anahita, who had granted him success, he founded a fire temple within the new city and built for himself a splendid palace. By establishing a city bearing his own name, Ardashir openly set himself against the Parthians, for in the Persian tradition, the founding of cities was a privilege reserved only for King of Kings. Through this act, he was, in effect, proclaiming himself Shahanshah. Moreover, the name he chose for his first city held profound meaning. In Persian belief, a ruler had to possess Far, or Quara, the divine glory of kingship, to be legitimized as Shahanshah, or King of Kings. By naming his city after this concept, Ardashir declared to all that he was endowed with divine royal radiance and therefore rightfully destined to rule over the Parthian Empire. When news of Ardashir's growing success reached Artabanus, who had only recently ascended the Parthian throne, he was enraged and sent a furious letter saying,
"You have overstepped your limit and brought your fate upon yourself, you Kurd, who was brought up in the tents of the Kurds, who has permitted you to put on a crown, to take possession of lands, to subject their kings and inhabitants, who has ordered you to build a town upon the open plain. If we allow you to go on building like this in peace, then build yourself a town with an area of 10 parasangs and call it Ram Ardashir."
Artabanus also warned that he had dispatched the king of Elymais to seize and subdue him. Ardashir replied to the Parthian monarch,
"Ahura Mazda gave me the crown, which I put on, made me the king of the lands which I captured, and helped me against the governors and kings, whom I killed. As far as the town is concerned, which you say I should build and call Ram Ardashir, I hope that I shall get you in my power, and send your head with all your possessions to the fire temple, which I have built in Ardashir Quara."
The Elymaian force, dispatched by Artabanus to confront Ardashir, entered Pars but was defeated at Ardashir Quara by Abasam, the city's governor, and forced to withdraw to Khuzestan. Upon receiving news of this victory, Ardashir marched with his army towards Spahan. In the battle that followed against Shad-Shapur, king of Spahan, the Persians were victorious and Shad-Shapur was taken captive. Ardashir then turned his forces against the semi-independent kingdom of Elymais and succeeded in capturing Shushtar. With this conquest, the Elymaian kingdom, long-standing for 4 centuries, was finally overthrown. Ardashir pressed on into southern Mesopotamia and added the semi-independent kingdom of Karasin to his imperial domains. By the king's order, the city of Karkmashan was rebuilt and renamed Astarabad Ardashir. After securing Karasin, Ardashir returned to Pars and once again wrote to Artabanus, asking him to name the place and time for battle. Artabanus answered, "I will meet you on the plain called Hormozdgan." Ardashir immediately gathered his soldiers and departed from Istakhr to confront the Parthian monarch. According to the Chronicle of Arbela, before reaching the plain of Hormozdgan, Ardashir succeeded in forming an alliance with the kings of Adiabin and Kark Beth Selok. It appears that several groups of Medes also joined his camp. On the opposing side, Artabanus, after assembling his own forces, set out toward the plain of Hormozdgan to face him. On April 28, 224 AD, Ardashir, who had reached the plain of Hormozdgan ahead of his rival, ordered his vanguard, commanded by his son Shapur, to find a suitable location for the army to encamp. Shapur set out at once and carefully surveyed the plain in search of an ideal position. Before long, he discovered the right place and reported it to his father. There was a spring in the plain, and whoever wished to quench their thirst had to draw water from it. Realizing this, Ardashir deployed his troops around the spring, thus taking full control of the sole water supply on the field. The Persians were now free from concern over thirst, while the Parthians would have to break through Persian lines to reach water. To further increase his chances of victory, Ardashir ordered a trench to be dug around his camp. This made any direct assault on the Persian army exceedingly deadly. Ardashir commanded his son Shapur, the commander of the vanguard, to watch over the routes leading into the plain through which the Parthian forces might pass, and to inform him at once should the enemy be sighted. On the other side, Artabanus had appointed his scribe and minister Dadbundad as commander of the Parthian vanguard, sending him ahead of the main army while he followed behind. It was not long before Shapur sighted Dadbundad's advancing troops. Without hesitation, he led his cavalry forward and launched a sudden attack on the Parthian vanguard. He also dispatched a messenger to inform Ardashir of the enemy's arrival. When Dadbundad saw the Persian horsemen charging, he swiftly rallied his forces and prepared to meet them in battle. Two armies arrayed with valor on either side, each warrior wielding Indian steel and blood-like lions fierce, they charged into the fray, and thus their blood flowed freely, a river's sway. The Persian cavalry soon gained the upper hand over their rivals. Amid the chaos, Dadbundad, commander of the Parthian vanguard, was slain by Shapur himself. When Artabanus approached the battlefield and saw the turmoil before him, he immediately led the main body of his army forward to aid his embattled troops and launched a fierce assault upon the Sasanian vanguard. Unable to withstand the sudden onslaught, Shapur quickly sent another messenger to his father, informing him of Artabanus's arrival. Ardashir wasted no time. He gathered all the soldiers remaining in the camp and marched swiftly toward the field of battle. The Persian vanguard, pressed hard by the Parthian attack, was on the brink of total collapse. Their morale faltered, and they were close to breaking and fleeing. At this critical moment, Ardashir arrived with the reinforcements. At the king's command, the Persian horsemen advanced in unison and charged headlong into the Parthian ranks. A fierce and desperate struggle ensued between the Persians and the Parthians. Ardashir emerged from the heart of the host, and the fury of battle did swell anew. Artaban too was ensnared by fate's cruel hand, losing the crown of kingship. According to Al-Tabari, Artabanus was slain by Ardashir in the midst of the battle. When the Parthians witnessed the fall of their king, they turned and fled from the field. To commemorate his great victory, Ardashir ordered the creation of a grand rock relief at Ardashir Quara. This monument, the largest rock carving of the Sasanian era, depicts the Battle of Hormozdgan. According to several historians, it is believed to be the first rock relief commissioned by the Sasanian dynasty. In this relief, Ardashir is shown charging toward Artabanus, while Shapur, riding behind him, strikes down Dadbundad. At the far end, a Sasanian commander is seen locked in combat with a Parthian officer. The scene corresponds perfectly with Al-Tabari's account, which describes both the single combat between Ardashir and Artabanus and the duel between Shapur and Dadbundad. Between 205 AD and 224 AD, Ardashir had brought Pars, Kerman, Spahan, Khuzestan, and Meshan under Sasanian control. Now, having defeated Artabanus, the king of kings of the Parthian Empire, in a decisive battle, his triumph seemed complete. Yet his work was not finished. Artavasdes, the son of Artabanus, having escaped the battlefield, fled to Media, where he began preparing for another confrontation. To discover the outcome of this next encounter, subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode.